The very habits that once made you successful may now be the same habits quietly holding you back. For years, you were rewarded for saying yes. Yes to opportunity. Yes to responsibility. Yes to being available, dependable, and indispensable. In America, that's what we're taught success looks like. Work harder, stay busy, say yes before someone else does, fill your calendar, maximize your hustle, earn your place. And it worked at first. It got you ahead. It built credibility. It opened doors. It gave you momentum. But somewhere along the way, without a clear moment of failure or collapse, something shifted. You didn't stop succeeding, but success started to feel heavier, more demanding, less satisfying. You became busy, but not fulfilled. Productive, but not present. Accomplished, but strangely restless. You began doing more, yet feeling less. This is not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're playing a game that was never designed to end well. America celebrates effort, but rarely teaches discernment. We praise motion, not direction. We reward availability, not impact. We admire people who do it all until they burn out, check out, or quietly wonder why the life they worked so hard to build doesn't feel like their own. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to face. Busyness has become a socially acceptable form of distraction. It keeps us from asking harder questions. It keeps us from confronting misalignment. It keeps us from noticing that our time, energy, and money are being spent, but not invested. Most people don't design their lives. They inherit them. They react to expectations, respond to pressure, and mistake movement for meaning. And because they never pause long enough to choose deliberately, they wake up one day wondering how they got so far from what actually matters. This is not just a productivity problem, it's a life problem. And increasingly, it's a financial problem too, because financial stress rarely comes from lack of income alone. It comes from lack of clarity, from commitments that outgrow their value, from saying yes to lifestyles, expenses, and obligations that no longer align with who you are or who you're becoming. We've been sold the idea that freedom comes from more money, more opportunities, more choices, more growth. But for many people, more has only created complexity, anxiety, and dependence. More to manage, more to maintain, more to worry about. And yet, despite all of this, most people feel trapped. Trapped by expectations, trapped by past decisions, trapped by the fear that if they slow down, say no, or simplify, everything they've built will collapse. It won't. In fact, the opposite is true. The moment you stop trying to do everything is the moment you begin doing what matters. The most successful people in the world, those with impact, clarity, and financial freedom, are not the ones who chased everything. They are the ones who learn to eliminate relentlessly, choose deliberately, and focus courageously. They understood something most people miss. Not everything that is important deserves your life. Your time is finite. Your energy is limited. Your attention is priceless. And every unintentional yes is quietly stealing from something essential: your health, your family, your creativity, your peace, your future. Essentialism is not about being less ambitious. It is about being more precise with ambition. It is not about doing less for the sake of less. It is about doing less so what remains can finally be done well. This matters deeply in American culture, where identity is often tied to work, output, and achievement. Where self-worth is measured by productivity. Where rest feels guilty and boundaries feel risky. But here's the shift that changes everything. Your value does not increase when your calendar fills up. Your value increases when your contribution becomes clear. Essentialism teaches you to stop living by default and start living by design. It teaches you to see trade-offs honestly instead of pretending you can have it all. It gives you permission, not to quit, but to choose. Choose depth over breadth. Choose leverage over effort. Choose freedom over frenzy. Choose enough over excess. Financially, this changes how you earn, spend, and invest. You stop chasing income without intention. You stop upgrading your lifestyle without upgrading your peace. You stop confusing consumption with success. Instead, you build systems that support your values. You create margin. You reduce unnecessary complexity. You let money serve your life, not the other way around. Emotionally, it changes how you relate to work and people. You stop proving your worth through exhaustion. You stop carrying commitments that no longer belong to you. You learn to say no without guilt because you finally understand what your yes is for. And perhaps most importantly, it changes how you experience your own life. You become present again, focused again, intentional again. You stop living as if everything is urgent and start living as if something is sacred. This is not about escaping responsibility. It's about choosing responsibility wisely. It's about realizing that you can do anything, but not everything, and that trying to do everything will eventually cost you everything. Essentialism is not a trend. It's a return to clarity, to agency, to alignment, to a life that actually feels like your own. And the question now is simple, but not easy. Will you continue living by other people's priorities? Or will you finally choose what is essential? Because the life you want is not built by doing more. It is built by choosing better. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the center of your life, not rushing, not reacting, just standing. Around you is noise, requests, expectations, obligations, notifications, meetings, deadlines, ambitions, fears, and opportunities calling your name all at once. Each one insists it is urgent. Each one claims it is important. Each one asks for just a little more of your time, your energy, your focus, your life. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to disappear. Not in a dramatic way. No sudden collapse. No single catastrophic mistake. Just a quiet erosion. A little less presence here, a little less excellence there. A little less joy, a little less meaning. Until one day you wake up exhausted, busy, accomplished perhaps, but strangely empty. Let me tell you something that took me years to fully understand. You do not get paid, in money or in meaning, for how much you do. You get rewarded for how essential your contribution is. Most people live under a dangerous illusion. They believe that success comes from doing more, trying harder, adding faster, pushing longer. And for a while, this illusion works. It even gets rewarded. Promotions, praise, opportunities, visibility, but then something subtle happens. The very success you work so hard for begins to betray you. You become the go-to person, you become reliable, you become capable. And suddenly everyone else's priorities become your life. This is not failure. This is the trap of non-essentialism. I have worked with leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals, parents, and creators across the world. Brilliant people, capable people, people who have everything it takes to make a profound impact, and yet so many of them feel stretched thin, distracted, overworked, and underutilized at the same time. Busy, but not effective. Successful, but not fulfilled. Earning, but not free. That paradox exists because busyness is not the same as progress, and activity is not the same as contribution. Essentialism begins with a radical but liberating truth. You always have a choice, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when the pressure is real, even when the consequences feel uncomfortable. The most dangerous words in the modern world are not "I can't." They are a "I have to." The moment you say, "I have to," you surrender your power. You hand over authorship of your life to circumstances, expectations, and other people's agendas. But the moment you say, "I choose to," everything changes. Responsibility returns. Clarity emerges. Power comes back. Essentialism is not about being lazy. It is not about doing nothing. It is not about lowering ambition. It is about raising the standard of what you say yes to. Let me be very clear here. Essentialism is not about doing less things. It is about doing the right things exceptionally well. Think about financial freedom for a moment. Most people chase it the same way they chase productivity. More income streams, more hustles, more investments, more leverage, more risk. But true financial freedom does not come from multiplying effort indiscriminately. It comes from identifying the few decisions that create disproportionate returns. The essentialist understands something most people miss. Wealth is not created by motion. It is created by leverage, focus, and intentional trade-offs. Just as 20% of your efforts produce 80% of your results, a tiny number of financial decisions shape the majority of your long-term freedom. What you invest in, what you avoid, what you commit to consistently, what you eliminate early. And yet, most people never slow down long enough to ask the essential question: what is the highest point of contribution I can make with my life, my work, and my resources right now? Instead, they ask, how can I fit it all in? How can I keep everyone happy? How can I avoid disappointing people? How can I do both? These are the wrong questions. Essentialists ask better ones. They ask, what really matters? What will matter in 5 years? What will matter when this season is over? What will I regret not doing? doing? What am I willing to say no to so I can say yes to what counts? Here is a truth that may unsettle you, but it will also set you free. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. Your boss, your clients, your inbox, your culture, your fears. And none of them will prioritize your health, your family, your creativity, your freedom, or your future the way you would. Essentialism is the disciplined pursuit of less, but better. And discipline is the key word, because left to default, life always fills itself with noise. Consider this. Every commitment you make is a financial decision, not just with money, but with time, energy, attention, and opportunity cost. Every yes is an investment, and like all investments, some compound while others quietly drain you. Essentialists build wealth and meaning the same way. They eliminate low-return commitments. They protect high-return activities. They create space for deep work. They invest where impact compounds. They understand that freedom, financial or otherwise, is not about excess. It is about enough, clearly defined. One of the greatest lies of modern success is the myth that you can have it all. You can't. And trying to do so guarantees you end up with a diluted version of everything that matters. But here's the good news. You can have anything, just not everything. That's not limitation, that's clarity. When you stop asking how to do more and start asking what truly matters, something extraordinary happens. Your calendar becomes a strategy, your finances become intentional, your energy returns, your work improves, your relationships deepen, your stress decreases, your confidence grows. Because clarity is powerful, let me leave you with this thought as we close part 1. The goal of life is not to be busy. The goal is to be essential. And the moment you decide to live that way, not someday, not later, but now, you begin a quiet revolution. One where less noise creates more meaning, where fewer commitments create greater freedom, where disciplined choices build a life that actually feels like your own. This is the beginning of the essentialist path. Imagine standing at a crossroads, not just once in your life, but dozens of times every single day. Every email, every meeting request, every opportunity, every purchase, every commitment asks the same silent question. Will you choose me? Most people answer automatically. They react, they respond, they accept, and in doing so, they slowly give away their ability to discern. Their lives become crowded not because they chose poorly once, but because they never chose deliberately at all. Essentialists live differently. They understand that discernment is not a talent. It is a discipline. It is not about intelligence. It is about pause. It is about creating space between stimulus and response. Because in that space, clarity is born. One of the most dangerous assumptions in modern life is this: everything is important. If everything is important, then nothing truly is. The essentialist sees the world as it really is, not evenly distributed in value, but wildly uneven. A small number of actions, decisions, and investments create outsized impact, while the vast majority contribute little beyond noise. This is not pessimism. This is realism. Think about your financial life for a moment. Look back, not emotionally, but analytically. Which decisions actually shaped your financial trajectory? Was it every expense, every hour worked, every opportunity pursued, or was it a handful of key choices, a job accepted or declined? A business started or avoided, a skill mastered, a habit formed, a debt eliminated, an investment held patiently. Wealth compounds from focus, not frenzy, yet most people approach life like a clearance sale, grabbing everything within reach, afraid that if they don't act now, they'll miss out forever. This fear-driven behavior leads to dilution of effort, of excellence, of returns. The essentialist replaces fear with discernment. They ask harder questions. Not "is this good?" But "is this essential?" Not a "can I afford this?" But "what will this cost me over time?" Not a "will this make me busy?" But will this move me meaningfully forward? Discernment requires something modern life resists: stillness, silence, reflection, thinking time. Most breakthroughs do not happen in meetings. They happen in moments of quiet clarity when the noise finally subsides and truth has room to surface. Essentialists deliberately create these moments. They walk without headphones. They schedule thinking time. They protect sleep. They resist the tyranny of immediacy. Why? Because discernment is impossible when you are constantly reacting. Let me share something counterintuitive. The essentialist explores more before committing, but commits harder once clarity is found. Non-essentialists rush commitment and then spread themselves thin. Essentialists delay commitment and then go all in. This principle alone can transform your financial life. Before investing money, essentialists invest thought. Before committing time, they evaluate opportunity cost. Before saying yes, they imagine the future consequences. They understand that saying yes to one path means saying no to many others, and they are willing to accept that responsibility. Here is a question essentialists return to again and again. What is the one thing that, if done exceptionally well, would make everything else easier or unnecessary? This question applies to your career, your finances, your health, your relationships, your personal growth. Most people never ask it because they are too busy doing everything else. But when you do ask it, and more importantly, when you wait long enough for the honest answer, you begin to see your life differently. You stop seeing tasks and start seeing leverage. You stop seeing options and start seeing priorities. Financial freedom is not achieved by increasing income endlessly. It is achieved by aligning income with intention, by ensuring that your earning, spending, and investing serve a clear vision, not a vague sense of a more. Essentialists define enough. Enough income, enough growth, enough comfort. And once enough is defined, excess becomes optional, not compulsory. This is powerful because when you no longer chase everything, you gain the freedom to choose anything. Another hallmark of discernment is extreme criteria. Most people evaluate opportunities using average standards. Essentialists use demanding ones. Instead of asking, does this meet the bar? They ask, does this clear the bar by a mile? If it doesn't, the answer is no, not because it's bad, but because it's not exceptional enough to justify the cost. Think about how this applies to your time, to your spending, to your commitments, to your goals. When you raise your standards, fewer things qualify, but the ones that do change everything. This is not elitism. It is stewardship. Your life is your most valuable asset. Your time is non-renewable. Your energy is finite. Treating them casually is not generosity, it is negligence. Essentialists are generous with what matters most by being ruthless about what does not. They understand that clarity precedes confidence, that when you know what matters, saying no becomes easier. And when saying no becomes easier, life becomes lighter. Let me offer you a quote I return to often. If it isn't a clear yes, it's a no. This is not about being rigid. It is about being honest. Honest about your limits. Honest about your limits. Honest about what truly deserves your life force. As we close part 2, reflect on this. Where in your life are you saying yes out of habit instead of intention? Where are you spending energy without meaningful return? Where are you confusing motion with progress? Discernment is the doorway to freedom, but only if you are willing to slow down enough to walk through it. At some point, clarity alone is no longer enough. You can see what matters. You can feel the pull towards something better. You can even name the essential few, and yet you hesitate. Because knowing what to eliminate is intellectually simple. Actually eliminating it is emotionally difficult. This is where most people stall. They discern beautifully, and then keep everything anyway. Why? Because elimination feels like loss. It feels like rejection. It feels like letting people down, wasting past effort, closing doors forever. And so instead of choosing deliberately, people compromise quietly. They carry commitments they've outgrown. They maintain investments of time, money, and energy that no longer serve them. They cling to good things that prevent great things from entering their lives. Essentialists understand something profound. Elimination is not destruction, it is liberation. Every meaningful gain requires a courageous release. Think about your financial life again. One of the most common reasons people never reach financial freedom is not lack of income. It's refusal to cut losses. They keep funding lifestyles that no longer align with their values. They stay invested in strategies that once worked but no longer do. They hold on to sunk costs because walking away would mean admitting a mistake. But sunk costs are gone whether you acknowledge them or not. The only question is whether you allow them to control your future. Essentialists refuse to let the past hold the present hostage. They understand that pride is expensive, and so is indecision. Let me say something that may challenge you. You do not owe your future to your past. Just because you started something does not mean you must continue it. Just because you once said yes does not mean you are obligated to say yes forever. Just because something was once essential does not mean it still is. Growth requires reassessment. One of the most powerful disciplines of elimination is learning to say no gracefully, firmly, and without apology. Not no as rebellion, not no as arrogance, but no as clarity. When you say no to the non-essential, you are saying yes to something far more important, often something invisible but priceless: focus, energy, peace, presence. Most people fear saying no because they confuse it with selfishness, but essentialists see it differently. They understand that every yes you give is a promise, and breaking promises to yourself is far more damaging than disappointing someone else momentarily. You cannot build a life of integrity while constantly betraying your own priorities. Here's a reframe that changes everything. Saying no is not a rejection of people. It is a protection of purpose. And purpose, once protected, has a way of multiplying impact. Consider how elimination applies to work. Meetings you don't need to attend. Projects that dilute your best effort. Responsibilities that exist only because no one ever questioned them. Essentialists ask, why does this exist? Or what would happen if we stopped? Is this truly adding value, or just creating the illusion of progress? The same applies to money. Subscriptions you don't use. Expenses that no longer align. Investments that consume attention without producing returns. Financial clutter is just as draining as mental clutter. Every unnecessary obligation taxes your future. Essentialists are willing to feel short-term discomfort for long-term freedom. They are willing to disappoint now to avoid regret later. They are willing to walk away from good opportunities so they can fully commit to exceptional ones. This is not minimalism for its own sake. It is precision. Like a sculptor removing marble to reveal form, elimination reveals what truly matters by removing what obscures it. And here is the paradox. When you eliminate wisely, people often respect you more, not less. Why? Because clarity is magnetic. Boundaries signal self-respect. And when your work improves, your presence deepens and your results speak louder. Resistance fades. Elimination also requires editing, the invisible art of subtraction, editing your schedule, editing your goals, editing your financial strategies, editing your identity. Yes, your identity. Yes, your identity. Sometimes the hardest thing to eliminate is the version of yourself that once made sense but no longer fits. The achiever who says yes to everything. The helper who never rests. The hustler who equates worth with exhaustion. Essentialists evolve by letting go of identities that no longer serve their mission. They choose alignment over approval. As we close part 3, sit with this question. What is one thing, just one, that you know you need to eliminate but haven't yet had the courage to release? Not everything, just one. Because elimination is not an event, it is a practice. And each deliberate removal creates space, not emptiness, but possibility. Once you have eliminated the non-essential, something remarkable happens. You don't just have more time. You don't just have more time. You don't just have fewer obligations. You have clarity with space around it, and space is not empty. Space is where execution becomes elegant. Most people believe execution is about force, pushing harder, grinding longer, willpower, discipline, late nights, hustle. They treat execution like a battle, something to fight through rather than something to design. Essentialists see it differently. They understand that the goal is not to do the essential with effort, but to make the essential almost effortless. This is where most productivity systems fail. They assume your environment stays the same and that you must change yourself to survive it. Essentialists reverse the equation. They design the environment so the right actions happen naturally and the wrong ones become difficult. Think about financial success. The people who build lasting wealth are rarely the most frantic. They are not constantly reacting to markets or chasing the next opportunity. They create systems that work quietly, consistently, and predictably. Automatic investing, simple rules, long-term thinking, low-friction decisions. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on design. Essentialists apply this principle everywhere. They ask, what obstacles make the essential hard? How can I remove friction from what matters most? What small adjustment would create a disproportionate improvement? Execution improves not when you add more steps, but when you remove resistance. Consider how often progress stalls because of tiny obstacles. A task feels too big to start. A decision requires too much thinking. A habit depends on willpower. A financial plan is too complex to follow. Essentialists solve these problems upstream. They break work into the smallest possible meaningful actions. They simplify choices until the right one is obvious. They create routines so excellence doesn't require energy. Routine is not rigidity. Routine is freedom in disguise. When you remove decision fatigue, you reclaim creativity. When you remove friction, momentum returns. When you remove chaos, clarity compounds. This is why essentialists protect sleep, not as indulgence, but as an asset. Exhaustion clouds judgment. Tired people make poor decisions financially, emotionally, strategically. Energy is not optional. It is foundational. And here's something few people recognize. Rest is not a reward for progress. Rest is a prerequisite for it. The essentialist does not burn out because they refuse to treat themselves like machines. They understand that sustainable success, especially financial independence, is built over time by people who can think clearly for decades, not sprint blindly for months. Another key principle of effortless execution is buffering. Most plans fail not because they are bad, but because they assume a perfect world. Essentialists expect friction, delays, mistakes, and uncertainty, so they build margin. Time buffers, financial buffers, emotional buffers. Margin is not inefficiency. Margin is resilience. In your finances, margin looks like emergency funds, conservative assumptions, and long-term horizons. In your life, it looks like white space, recovery time, and flexibility. Without margin, everything feels urgent. With margin, you gain perspective. Essentialists also focus on progress, not perfection. They celebrate small wins because small wins compound. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence fuels consistency. Consistency creates mastery. Financial freedom is not a single event. It is the result of hundreds of small aligned decisions made consistently over time. Spend intentionally. Save automatically. Invest patiently. Avoid unnecessary complexity. Complexity is seductive, but simplicity scales. Essentialists resist the temptation to optimize everything. Instead, they focus on optimizing the few things that truly matter. They choose systems over goals, habits over hacks, and consistency over intensity. Let me share a principle that transforms execution. If it's important, make it easy. If it's unimportant, make it hard. Want to focus? Remove distractions. Want to save money? Automate it. Want to think deeply? Protect time. Want to grow wealth? Reduce decisions. Design beats discipline every time. As we approach the end of Part 4, recognize this. Execution is not about heroic effort. It is about intelligent design. When your environment supports your values, your life stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like alignment. At some point on the essentialist journey, something subtle but profound shifts. You stop asking, how do I manage everything better? And you start asking, who do I want to be? Because essentialism is not merely a strategy for productivity. It is a philosophy of identity, a way of living that begins not with tasks or goals, but with value. Most people spend their lives reacting to roles: employee, provider, leader, achiever, hustler, saver, investor. Essentialists step back and ask a more fundamental question. What kind of life am I building through these choices? And this is where financial freedom takes on its true meaning. Financial freedom is not about escaping work. It is about escaping misalignment. It is not about luxury. It is about choice. It is not about excess. It is about sufficiency with intention. When money becomes the goal, it never satisfies. There is always more to earn, more to protect, more to compare. But when money becomes a tool, quietly serving a life of purpose, it loses its grip and gains its power. Essentialists understand that enough is not a number. It is a feeling of alignment between what you value and how you live. They define success inwardly before pursuing it outwardly. This is rare. And because it is rare, it is powerful. Most people unconsciously adopt definitions of success handed to them by culture, family, peers, or fear. More status, more income, more visibility, more achievement. And yet, many reach those milestones only to discover they feel strangely hollow. Not because success is bad, but because it was never theirs to begin with. Essentialists reclaim authorship. They recognize that identity precedes behavior, and behavior compounds into destiny. When you identify as someone who values presence, you protect time. When you identify as someone who values excellence, you say no more often. When you identify as someone who values freedom, You simplify relentlessly. This is why essentialism feels lighter over time. Not easier, but clearer. There is less internal conflict, less guilt, less second guessing. Fewer compromises that erode self-trust, and self-trust is everything. Financial independence, when pursued essentialistically, strengthens self-trust rather than replaces it. You are no longer chasing money to feel safe. You are building systems so safety becomes quiet and reliable. You stop obsessing over outcomes and start focusing on principles. Live below your means, not as deprivation, but as autonomy. Invest patiently, not as speculation, but as belief in the future. Avoid lifestyle inflation, not because you can't afford more, but because you don't need it to feel whole. Essentialists are not impressed by complexity, they are impressed by clarity. They understand that the most meaningful lives are often the least cluttered, financially, emotionally, and mentally. Another shift happens here. You stop trying to optimize every moment. You stop measuring your worth by output. You stop equating busyness with importance. Instead, you begin to value being fully present. Presence at work, presence with family, presence with yourself. This is where joy quietly returns. Not as excitement, but as peace. The essentialist life is not loud. It is deliberate. It is built on daily recommitment. Each morning asking, what matters today? What can wait? What will I protect? And perhaps most importantly, what kind of life am I saying yes to with this decision? Legacy is not something you leave behind. It is something you live into, one choice at a time. The people who look back with the least regret are not those who did the most. They are those who did what mattered consistently with care. As we approach the final part, recognize this. Essentialism is not a finish line. It is a practice, a lens, a way of being. And once adopted, it reshapes everything, from how you spend an hour to how you shape a lifetime. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to return to where we began. Not to busyness, not to pressure, not to the noise, but to choice. Because long after strategies fade and tactics change, the ability to choose deliberately remains the defining feature of an essentialist life. The world will not slow down for you. It will not become quiet. It will not stop asking for more of your attention, your time, your money, your energy. If anything, the demands will increase. The expectations will multiply. The opportunities will become more tempting and more distracting. This is why essentialism is not a phase, it is a practice. You do not become an essentialist once and remain one forever. You recommit daily, weekly, seasonally. You notice when your life begins to fill with noise again. You catch yourself drifting back into automatic yeses, and gently, firmly, you return to what matters. The essentialist life is not rigid. It is resilient. It adapts without losing its center. Financially, this means you will face uncertainty. Markets will fluctuate. Income will change. Circumstances will evolve. But when your financial decisions are grounded in principles rather than panic, you remain steady. You don't chase trends. You don't react emotionally. You don't confuse volatility with failure. You return to the essentials. Spend intentionally. Save consistently. Invest patiently. Live within enough. Freedom is built slowly, but it is lost quickly when principles are abandoned. Emotionally, you will encounter seasons where saying no feels harder than usual, where ambition resurfaces, where comparison creeps in, where the old metrics of success whisper seductively. In those moments, essentialism offers an anchor. You pause. You ask better questions. You remember who you are becoming, not just what you are achieving. Because the ultimate measure of success is not how much you accumulate, but how little you regret. One day, far sooner than we expect, the noise will stop asking for us. And in that quiet, we will live with the consequences of our choices. The meetings we attended or skipped, the relationships we nurtured or postponed, the health we protected or sacrificed, the freedom we built or deferred. Essentialists live with that day in mind, not morbidly, but wisely. They ask, what will matter then? What will I wish I had protected? What will I be grateful I said no to? And then they live backward from those answers. This is where essentialism becomes deeply human. It teaches us that our lives are not problems to solve, but gifts to steward. That meaning is not found in excess, but in alignment. That peace is not the absence of ambition, but the presence of clarity. You will still strive. You will still grow. You will still aim high. But you will do so without losing yourself in the process. Let me leave you with a few principles to carry forward, quiet truths that essentialists return to again and again. Less but better is not a constraint. It is an invitation. Clarity is kindness to yourself and to others. Financial freedom is not about escaping responsibility. It is about choosing responsibility intentionally. You can do anything, but not everything. What you eliminate defines what you become. And perhaps most importantly, a life that truly matters is not built by default. It is built by design. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Every day offers you the chance to choose again, to edit, to refine, to recommit, not perfectly, not dramatically, but faithfully. And over time, those small, disciplined choices compound into something rare and beautiful. A life that feels whole, free, and deeply your own. That is the promise of essentialism. Not more, not faster, not louder, just essential.